which is the, what did I do?
24th.
Yeah, I know, but I put the wrong date here, I know why I did. So we won't have it on Christmas Eve, and we won't have it on New Year's Eve. So the 24th and the 31st, we won't have Pastor's Cup. Next Sunday, in the morning, for the morning service, it's gonna be on YouTube. And that way, if you have friends or family in town, you can get up and watch it at your, when you want to watch it. But we will be here at 5:30 and 11 for the Christmas Eve services. So those are in person, so show up. And then the next Sunday will be here in person, so on New Year's Eve. All right, so today is the third Sunday of Advent. It is the Sunday of joy. And so we know that the choir is singing this morning, the cantata, and the music will be, as it was last night, Bring Joy to Our Lives. Okay, so this is my good friend Judy Glover, and she is the younger sister I never had. And Judy and I met, we figured 17 or 18 years ago for the first time, and that's when she and John decided to get married. I'd known John before that, and they decided to get married, and that's when I met Judy. And I was honored to help marry them, and so far it's lasted, so, so we're glad.
On the trial period.
Oh, it's still on trial period, she said, so we'll see. Yeah, I gotta get to 25 before
Right.
it's a done deal, I guess. So anyway, so we've been friends, and they are our some of our traveling buddies. So when we've gone on most of our trips.
Most of our big trips, we've been to Germany and Scotland and Mexico.
And well, when we went on the river cruise, we went to a lot of countries.
Yeah, we went to a lot.
And so there are about 6 of us, and we get along okay, and nobody gets mad and all that, so that's good. Okay, so Judy works at, do you say you work at the Presbyterian Night Shelter? She started out at True Worth, but then that became a part of the Presbyterian Night Shelter, and so now she's the volunteer coordinator for all of the Presbyterian Night Shelter. So that's a big job. And so I wanted to know if you would start out, just give us a very brief overview of the work of the Presbyterian Night Shelter, and mention something about the new housing.
So Presbyterian Night Shelter started in 1984. It was one of the coldest winters on record, and there's a gentleman by the name of Jasper Wilkerson who was sleeping in his car because he didn't have a place to go. And unfortunately he passed away because of the cold temperatures. So 3 Presbyterian churches got together and said, you know, this can't happen in our city. And so they started a shelter, and it was just going to be for the winter, and then they were going to close up shop, pat themselves on the back, and job well done, and go on about their business. But they still had 200 women, men, and children showing up for clothing and diapers and food. So at that time they realized they needed to do something more. So in 1987, the Presbyterian Night Shelter started. So this marks, on December the 10th, marks our 40th year of being the largest homeless shelter, emergency shelter in North Texas. So we're low barrier, which means we don't require ID, we don't require background check, and we don't require a length of stay. Anybody can come to our door, knock on it at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we will provide them a bed, a warm meal, shelter. So over those years, we have several programs. Even though we're the largest homeless shelter, our goal is housing first. We know that it helps the person, the city, the state, if we can house somebody first. We can deal with mental health issues, we can deal with addiction issues, we can deal with all of that when somebody is housed. We don't have to fix everybody before we house them. We have, the way we do that is we have the shelter, we have case management, And then we have job programs. The number one reason why someone is homeless is because they don't have a job. So we can't talk about ending chronic homelessness if we don't try to fix the number one reason why someone's homeless. So we started our job program in 2016. You may see trucks that say Upspire, picking up trash or doing water abatement. We have 170 jobs that our staff or our guests work with, and they're Presbyterian Night Shelter employees. They are not temporary employees. We have contracts with the City of Fort Worth Waste Management. If you live in Fort Worth and there you see somebody on the back of a waste management truck, that is a Presbyterian Night Shelter employee. So what's neat about that is we provide shelter, we provide all the tools they need to be successful. We give them a ride to work, we give them lunch, and we give them a ride home, the shelter, every day. But we're also going to pay them $12 to $16 an hour. $7.25 does not help anybody move out of homelessness. You can't afford it. So the City of Fort Worth doesn't have a housing issue, but it has an affordable, sustainable housing issue. So all of these apartments that are being built around us are not affordable. So when we try to help house somebody, sometimes we have to go outside of Fort Worth proper. And we run into two issues. We run into lack of public transportation, and we run into a food desert. This zip code right here is considered a food desert. You've got a Family Dollar and a Quick Trip. That's not affordable food. If you go outside of this area, where I used to live, which was in Lake Worth, was just 11 miles away from here, we don't have public transportation. So you can't move somebody all the way out there if they don't have a way to get into services. So we run into all of that. So not only are we trying to do that, but we're also trying to do housing first. So in earlier this year, we bought some property on Crowley Road, and that will start construction in early 2024. And we will build 96 units of efficiency apartments for folks that are over 55, that maybe have a disability, or that may have been that are considered chronically homeless. So we got that started early in 2023. Well, about May of this year, we were approached by the Southwest Seminary that they were selling all of their student housing, and wanted to know if we wanted to be part of that. So we ended up buying 40 units of seminary housing, which is interesting because since they're seminary student housing, they weren't trashed. They were in really good shape. We had to put a new roof on them. We had to give some new paint and some new, maybe some new appliances, but they were basically ready to move in. So in Tarrant County, we have a family homelessness crisis right now. There are about 75 families in Tarrant County that are considered unsheltered and they do not have a place to go. When they call any shelter, they are being told, we do not have room. There is no place for you. Please try to stay where you are. So our family center houses 40 families at any given time. This isn't how it works, but we could technically empty out our family shelter and move them into permanent housing at that student housing. Or we call it seminary housing. So that's exciting when you think about 40 families will be moved into permanent, affordable housing. We have staff on site there to make sure that, their needs are being met. Food's being met. They can pay their rent. It is permanent housing. It is not transitional housing. So as long as they pay their rent, which is very reasonable for a 2-bedroom furnished apartment, we put brand new furniture and all of that. Because you can move somebody out of homelessness into an apartment, but what do they have? Every dime they have went to the application fee, the deposit, so they move in and they have nothing. So let's furnish it so it feels like a home right off the bat. Earlier this year, December 1st, I believe, at 10 o'clock, we also took ownership of Quail Trail Apartments in River Oaks, which is 48 units. same thing, permanent affordable housing. So Presbyterian Night Shelter will never spend money to build more shelter. All of our money will go into affordable housing. That's a very long elevator speech.
That's
but
all right, that's good. All right, so, one quick thing, so you have a building for veterans.
Yes, we have a building for veterans. We have a women's shelter. We have a men's shelter. We have a building that we call Safe Haven, which houses 20 of the most severely mentally challenged individuals that could not survive. And then we have our family center. And we have True Worth Place. And then we have Upspire.
Okay, so, when they first started, way back, everybody was in one
building.
shelter. And so like families, you know, a parent with a young child probably didn't wanna go, even though they needed shelter.
Right.
Now there's a place for them, so that's.
So, yeah, when the original Presbyterian Night Shelter was built, it housed everybody.
Yeah.
And then so in the early 2000s, we moved the family, the single moms and families out of that building. Really not really, because we just moved them across the street. But when we built our new family center, we moved it 2 blocks down the road. The activity that happens on this corner right here where the main shelter is completely different than the activity that happens 2 blocks down the road. So, we also, it used to be the Women and Children's Building, but in 2018, a study was done that the largest growing homeless population was single dads and their families. They had no place to go. So we carved out some space, changed the logistics a little bit, changed it to the family center, so now we house single moms, single dads, intact families, or, you know, right now we have a grandmother and her grandson. Whatever you consider your family to be, you're welcome in that shelter. It's your family. The other thing that we do with our families is that nationwide, if somebody is 16, they usually go to the single men's shelter. We firmly believe that a 16-year-old is still a child, and they do not need to be up at the men's shelter. They need to be with their parents. And so they stay with them. If they come in at 18, we have one that turned 19, they're still there, and they will stay there with their family.
Okay, and True Worth is like a day resource center. You can go there, you can get your mail there, you can use a computer, you can go to a class. They have a class
book
that does
club.
a book club, is a book club, and they read a book. They can get social services, they can get their ID and all those things. So it's a wonderful place for people who are unhoused or people who just having trouble and need help to get that going. Okay, Judy, so when you first started working, you started working at True Worth. Way back when you first started your career working, did you ever imagine that you would be in a job like this, ministering to people who have been kind of dismissed by the world?
No, my previous career was a mortgage underwriter. I processed and approved loans for $1 million houses in California, in Texas, Oklahoma, most of the western states. I was there in 2006 and 2007 when the mortgage industry decided that if you could fog a mirror, you could buy a house.
Yeah.
And so, and we let the computers decide who was approved and who wasn't. So they took the human aspect out of it, where you could look at somebody and see that one, they could barely afford this house if you add groceries and gas and all of that. And we weren't given an option to say, hey, these folks really can't afford this. And so it was really hard to manage going to work every day. We were sick all the time, and when I was laid off, I got laid off, and I'd worked in 3 different mortgage industries at that point. And so Dan Freemeyer, who was at Broadway, called and said, hey, we have a job here in our community. And I said, no, I don't want to take a job away from somebody. I'll find something, don't worry about it. So he calls me back and he goes, I don't have anybody, just come work for me for a little bit, it's flexible. And I said, okay, I'll come. most I'll be here is 90 days. Well, 9 years later, and about 60% of my income less, and it was, I felt like that's where I needed to be my entire life. It was very comfortable, it was very safe for me. I'd never been in that position to be somebody that could help, that could listen, and still create strong boundaries and encourage people to volunteer, encourage people to give, encourage people to, you know, be as passionate about what the church was doing, what the city was doing. And so it was like I found my place. And I worked there for 9 years as the community center director. And when they opened up True Workplace, it felt like the next step. Now, I did have a lot of people coming back to me and saying, hey, you know, the church is pretty safe with the homeless people that you have coming in there. Lancaster's a little bit different. It's a little bit raw, it's a little bit, you know, it's a lot more dangerous. Are you sure you're making the right choice? I'm not sure. So when we started True Worth, it was interesting because we had a new building, so a lot of people were going to try to push our boundaries. So it was a little tough for that first 6 weeks. Well then, Presbyterian Night Shelter was gifted True Workplace, its building and its operation. So we folded into True Worth, or into Presbyterian Night Shelter. And by doing that, somewhere on Presbyterian Night Shelter's campus, we were open 365 days, 24 hours a day. And so not only did I just now take True Worth, I ended up taking all the volunteer opportunities for the entire campus. So I have an average of about 2,000 volunteers. I manage the portfolios for all of the churches in Fort Worth. Volunteer-wise, sandwich ministry, when COVID hit, I reached out to every church, every person that I knew, every minister I knew, and said, hey, can you help us? And so in 2020, we had over 150,000 sack lunches or sandwiches delivered to Presbyterian Night Shelter. And you guys are part of that. Yesterday, y'all delivered 1,600 sandwiches, plus 800, 600 snacks, something like that. Snacks and water. What those sandwiches and what those snacks do, they provide food for our Upspire employees that go out every day. They provide food to our snacks to our kids when they come home from school. They are so hangry when they get off the bus that, I mean, some of them eat at 10:30 in the morning, and dinner's not till 5:30. It provides a snack for them. It provides a snack or a sandwich for somebody that comes to our door at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it also helps our food budget by us being allowed to pass out sack lunches for lunch or for those folks that come in afterwards. So I manage all of those volunteers. I manage a portfolio. I manage in-kind donations. And so it just keeps opening up my opportunities to serve this community, which I never thought this is where I would be.
Well, we were glad when Dan talked you into coming to Broadway. So tell us a specific story about a person or a family that you've been able to help at Presbyterian Night Shelter. I'm sure you have lots, but think of one that...
So I'm going to tell you a story about a gentleman by the name of Michael Tover. Michael Tover and his wife and their 4 children came to the shelter during the pandemic. They both lost their jobs because of COVID. And so they came, and they didn't have a car, they didn't have housing, they didn't have anything. And so Michael came over to Upspire, and they gave him a job for with waste management, and he was picking up trash. And our agreement with contractors is if this is a good employee, make them your employee. They have a better chance for advancement, pay raises, that sort of thing, and then it frees up a job on our end. So, but the caveat to that is if this person wants to stay as a Presbyterian Night Shelter employee, we're going to allow them to do that. So Michael started in waste management, picking up trash, riding on the back of a trash truck. Waste management saw something in Michael that piqued their interest and gave him 3 months to study for his CDL license, and then paid the $10,000 for him to go to Florida to take his testing to become a big truck driver. He passed that test. He came back. Waste management gave him a job as a waste management driver. They were able to move into their own apartment. They were able to buy a second car. He tells us, I don't have to worry about my kids getting sick because I have insurance. I have scholarship money for my kids to go to school, and I don't have to worry about working until the day I die like my dad did. Not all of our stories are big like that, but everybody has a success story. Anytime somebody comes up to us and says, they come up to us and say, hey, I got my keys today, is a huge thing. It just warms your heart because we're not just staff, we're their friends, we're their safe space, and so they're gonna come tell us, hey, I'm gonna miss you, but I've got my keys today, so you may not see me anymore. So whenever we don't see somebody, that's huge, because we always wanna think that's because they're housed, they're living their life, they've moved past this. We don't ever wanna see anybody come back, but it's always exciting when they come and say, hey, I've got my keys, or I don't have to worry about my kids being sick because they have insurance now. It's the little things that we take for granted sometimes.
Okay, thanks. And so in your work at the Presbyterian Night Shelter, all of us who are still working know that any job you have, there are things you love to do and things that are not so great, but they have to be done. Mm-hmm. So what is the one thing that you do that brings you the most joy in your life?
So I think the one thing that I love most about my job is this: telling people, giving tours, telling people about the Presbyterian Night Shelter. They talk about how you can, you're supposed to have this elevator speed that can last 30 to 60 seconds, right? Well, I get so excited about talking about the night shelter that it takes me at least 8 to 10 minutes to bring it all down. But if you come on campus, I'm going to take 45 minutes of your time, because I'm going to tell you everything you want to know about the shelter. I want you to leave as informed and as blessed and encouraged, and to go forward and to share that with your congregation, your friends, your family. That it's not just, that bed, that there's so much more. The classes that we provide, the services that we provide. Presbyterian Night Shelter, a lot of times people are like, every time we tell them, they're like, I didn't realize you were that big. I didn't realize you did all that. Because we're low key. We're just doing what needs to happen. But we're going to do that with respect and accountability and dignity and safety and security. We're going to do all of that. So that's my favorite part, is sharing the story of Presbyterian Night Shelter.
It's obvious that you enjoy it. So you're talking to the chair of our missions committee, Nat. Mm-hmm. Will be starting in January. And so we know that we already do the sandwiches, and we do that once a month. Mm-hmm. And as Judy said, that started during the pandemic, because the strange thing, I guess it wasn't really strange, but all the opportunities that were presented to us during the pandemic had to do with food. Mm-hmm. We were contacted by the Fort Worth ISD, and if you remember, some people took a family, and the family would give their list, and you go shopping and deliver the food. We got those big boxes of food that we delivered. And then we started making the sandwiches. So it all revolved around food insecurity. And that's something that's good to do, but there's so many other volunteer opportunities at the Presbyterian Night Shelter. Before I started Celebration, I volunteered for Judy in the mail room, because people, you think about it, if you don't have a house, you're unhoused, where do you get your mail? you don't have an address. So they have mailboxes, and you can sign up and get your mail there, and that gives some stability. You're not moving around all the time, and where does, if you, like me, I've had some problems with the post office, and they're not real good at changing your address. So, I volunteered in the mailroom, and, we put up the mail every day, and, I volunteered one day a week, and, that's just one of the things that can be done. So I wanted to know if you would, tell everybody here in that, if I wanna volunteer, one, what do I do? And then if we came and said, we have 5 people that wanna volunteer, what are the kinds of jobs that you would need for them to do?
Sure.
Does that sound good?
So, the first step would be to fill out our volunteer application online. Takes about 5 minutes. And then what happens is that I invite you to a volunteer orientation via Zoom. I do that twice a month. So if you come to me and say, Celebration wants to do something, how can we be involved? Like Jorene said, if it's 1 or 2 people, there's tons of opportunities working in the mailroom. If you love to do laundry, I have got the perfect gig for you, because we wash, dry, and fold 20 loads of laundry for our guests every single day and have it ready for them in that afternoon. But we also have the front desk. We also do all those classes. When Jorene was talking about the book club, we have over 800 classes that we provide every year to our guests. And not all of them are resume writing or how to get your GED, but some of them are the book club and guitar lessons and podcast and coloring, which is very bizarre. But they color and they listen to a podcast. Or we have financial aid. We have NBT Financial Bank that comes and gives budgeting classes. We have Tree used to do a budgeting class as well. So we have all of that. We want to nurture that person 100% while they're on our campus. So if you have a talent or you have a group of people that can do that, you can come together and provide a class. But we also do a thing that we call True Brew Cafe. We do that once a month, where we provide coffee and pastries for our guests and live music. So I'm always looking for folks that will come volunteer, 5 or 6 that can come volunteer, that can bring pastries for about 40 people, and serve coffee in mugs and pastries while they listen to live music. If you have somebody that can play music, live music, local music, bring them as well, and let's enjoy that. So it's like a coffee shop. But we also do what we call our foot clinic. The foot clinic, we work with the nursing school at TCU. So they bring their students in and they kind of do like a foot care. They're checking out people's feet to make sure that they're healthy. We know that most of our folks are walking. Most of our folks are using shoes that were not new to them. And so they're checking the overall health of their feet. But then we have volunteers that will then turn around and do a foot washing, a mini pedicure, where, talk about being a servant to wash somebody's feet. We provide that. So that's a great opportunity for a Sunday school class or a group of people to come in and do feet washing for our guests. You can also come as a group and serve a meal. We serve over 1,500 meals every single day. And so a group of 5 or 6 can come and serve dinner, either at our main shelter or at our family center. You can come together and provide something fun for our vets to do, coffee and donuts and that sort of thing. But it's all about being present and being relationship building, but with very strong boundaries. We don't give people rides. We don't give them money. We don't, if you see somebody that, wears a size 15 shoe and you want to go buy them a size 15 shoe, you definitely can do that. But you're going to give that to the staff so we can pass it out to them. So because people are always watching. So if they see a volunteer give somebody a pair of shoes, I can guarantee you that same volunteer is going to get hit up. I also need a pair of shoes. But so, we work around all of that. And then, you know, Christmas time comes around, there's an opportunity to adopt a family, do a clothing drive, do, you know, toy drives, all of that. So you can do that here or on site, whatever that looks like. So there's tons of opportunities. I have over 2,000 volunteers this year alone, and I have so many holes that need to be filled still, that hundreds more could come in and fill those holes.
Yeah, I was talking about your feet. You know, if you walk all day, you know that they're real important. And I have a friend Mary, who is, she has before been on the street. She has mental health issues. Right now, thankfully, she's in a good group home. But one day she was telling me that her feet hurt. And this has been back a number of years. And I said, well, why do your feet hurt? And she said, because she always had on decent looking shoes. And she said, well, I don't know if these shoes fit. And so she took them off. Well, they were like a 9. And I said, Mary, I don't think that's your shoe size. And she said, well, that somebody had just given them to her. She had a friend that would take her to Costco, and Mary never said, this shoe doesn't fit, and the friend would just buy shoes. And so I said, we're gonna go down. There are not many places you can get your foot measured these days, but Cartans will do it on Magnolia. I said, we're going to Cartans, we're gonna measure your foot. She wore 7.5. So she would wear these big shoes, and then you walk a long time and your foot, it doesn't work. And so finally I said, if somebody wants to give you a pair of shoes, say, I wear a 7.5. And she was like, oh, okay. And I said, because you can't wear those other shoes, you're gonna ruin, you know, it hurts your feet. And so I think she's done that pretty much, but it's that she felt like if somebody offered her something, she should take it no matter what.
Right.
Even if she didn't wear that kind of clothes, yes. Even if she didn't wear that kind of clothes, even if she couldn't wear those shoes, but she would take it. And so I'm sure you see that all the time.
All the time.
And so I think, I hope, I wish, I think that making sandwiches, like Judy said, is great. I think the next step for us is to do something hands-on, where and you know, people always say, well, what do you say to people that are homeless? How do you talk to them? Just like I'm talking to you. They're people. And at the Agape meal, people would come to volunteer and they'd say, well, I've never sat at a table with homeless people. They're gonna talk about the same things you talk about. And, you know, they heard about a family that lost their child down in Houston and they were murdered or something, or whatever. But they've heard that too, and they talk about all those kinds of things. And so, actually, the Agape meal is a great place to go and get experience of being around people who are possibly on the street or in difficult times, because it's real a low threat kind of thing.
Well,
So
part of
what
it,
is your website if you want to get signed up on like your
It's-
online volunteer application? Where is the website?
it's journeyhome.org,
Okay.
or you can Google Presbyterian Night Shelter and it'll automatically
Okay.
pop up.
Oh,
What's interesting about at the shelter is that you are not gonna be in-depth one-on-one, right? You may run across that, but if you're serving a meal, it's that smile, it's that, hey, how are you? It's that, thanks for letting me be here today. It's all of that. The one last thing I have for a volunteer opportunity is that we have a chapel that we would love for churches to become part of, and either provide a weekly prayer service or a weekly something where you come in and do that worship service. And it's, you know, you're gonna see 5 or 6 people in there, and they are just looking for church. And people ask me all the time, you know, can we do that? And I'm like, these people have more faith than all of us put together, that the fact that they get up every morning and face the things that they're facing, you know, we don't have to yell at them through a bullhorn out on the streets to accept Jesus. They've done that. They're doing that every single day. But if we can provide a prayer service for them where they can come in and hear the word, that's huge as well, and that's a great
What
opportunity.
time is that?
That's pretty flexible. We usually, we don't have a chaplain on campus right now, so we can just make that work, however. Yeah.
All right, John?
Judy, I believe
Yes.
the key word in your presentation was the word guest.
Yeah.
Yes.
That stood out overall.
So we did that. We used to call everybody clients, right? But when True Worth opened up, we called everyone guests, and we did that subconsciously. And then when Presbyterian Night Shelter took over, they adopted that policy as well. It took us about a year to get that, but we do that for a couple of reasons. One, they are a guest, and if we don't know their name, we're not going to call them client. We're going to call them a guest. But it also is subconsciously letting them know that, one, you're welcomed here, and you can stay here as long as you need to, but this isn't your home and you can't stay here forever. But it's a sign of respect, and that's one of our core values is respect. And we're gonna do that every day, and by us calling them guests, it reminds them, they know my name. There are people that I don't know, but I guarantee you they know my name. But if I can't know their name, at least I'm gonna offer some respect and say guests. So yes, thank you for recognizing that. That's one of the biggest things that I love about the shelter.
And you know, Judy worked at Broadway for many years, and it's interesting the ways that we don't even think about that we disrespect people who are unhoused or who don't have much in the world, and that is we decide what they need and what they want. And so I know they would give out clothes to children and at the community center at Broadway, and it doesn't matter if a child's poor, they still have their own taste, right? They know if they like red or blue or whatever. And so to let them pick out what they want is a huge sign of respect. At first, when I went to Broadway in the food ministry, there were this committed group of older ladies. And let me say, they were committed. I can't fault them for that. But they made these sacks every week. It was like, this is for a family of 5, this is for a family of 4, this is for, on down. And they put the same thing in every bag. You got a bag of pinto beans, you got a bag of rice.
Can of peanut butter.
What?
A jar of peanut butter.
A jar of peanut butter. And they would come without fail and make these bags. And so when they died off or left, Dan Freemeyer and Judy changed it into the May Street Market. And so there's a list that says if you have a family of 4, you can pick 3 veggies and this and this and this. If you have a family of 2, you can pick this many. But you have a little grocery cart and you go around and pick what your family likes. And I think that's one of the greatest signs of respect is that if you're poor, you don't suddenly start liking pinto beans if you never liked them before.
Right.
Or what if you're allergic to pinto beans or whatever.
So when we opened the May Street Market, for about a year and a half, we had an abundance of pinto beans and canned jars of peanut butter. Just people had their own inventory. And so, yeah, it took us a while to get through some of that.
Yeah, it is. And so I think you're right, John, all the ways we can find to say that we do respect. This is a family, and if you're a family of 1, you're a family. And that they deserve our respect, not just us making assumptions about them. Well, we could go on and talk. I want to thank Judy for coming.
Thank you guys so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
John,
you.
I'm getting high sign.